Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm with a very good friend of mine, Jennifer Kempson. So Jennifer is owner and creator of the Mamafurfur brand, and she has an amazing YouTube channel. And I asked her today if she would spend 10 or 15 minutes chatting to us about investing. So week 4 of the Financial Wellness Festival is investing. And the aim here is to get everyone more comfortable with investing and to understand that it is a real key part of ultimately being financially well because it's going to support us in the future. So Jen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for
And
having me.
well, could you start off with telling us a little bit about the Mamafurfur story?
Okay, condensed version. So really, my husband and I met, and he unfortunately had £24,000 worth of consumer debt. I had never had debt before, and so when we got married and a couple, I decided that the debt was no more. Kind of very strong-willed, but I decided we were going to pay it all off as quickly as we could. And that journey, then, particularly because I was on my maternity leave with my youngest, my second one, it felt like being in that debt had then consequences in our life. I had no options but to stay working full time, my husband as well, to pay for bills. It just felt like everything was hinged on having this weight over us with the debt. And so we put a plan together, and as a consequence of that plan, I of course started reading lots of books, lots of famous books about money: Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Dave Ramsey, Ramit Sethi, Tony Robbins, huge names that we've all heard of. And I started looking for blogs and YouTube channels and all the usual things. And 4 or 5 years ago, actually, when we started, 5 years ago when my youngest, there was nobody with a UK voice really talking on YouTube at all. So YouTube in particular, I love. And I thought, I wonder why nobody in the UK is talking about how to invest, how to save, not let alone be a woman, but just anyone. And I decided that I was going to pick up a camera and share my journey. So that was the start of Mamafurfur. 3 years ago, it's coming up to the 3-year mark officially, that I was finding out all about investing and saving and paying off debt and being mortgage free and side hustles and passive incomes through that obsessiveness over learning about finances, because I had never gained it. I grew up in the south side of Glasgow, quite a middle class area, never had debt. My family never had debt outside of the mortgage. And I didn't really understand anything about money. Mum and dad always looked after everything, had little part-time jobs, but nobody taught me about pensions or thinking about the future. I just assumed you got a job and that was it. So when I started to learn about all these other ways that you could create money, and yeah, that was Mamafurfur. So 3 years now I've been making content, particularly for a UK audience. Doesn't matter what you look like, who you are, where you've come from. I just usually talk about pensions, investing, side hustles, entrepreneurship, the works.
So when it comes to investing then, and I know investing is a wide concept because you can invest in yourself, you can invest
Absolutely.
in a business, you can invest in a side hustle, anything that produces growth. But
Yes.
when it comes to more traditional forms of investing, so when it comes to pension and brokerage accounts, ISAs, what was the turning point for you where you started to do that or started to do it at a bigger rate than is the norm?
Okay, it was really reading one book in particular. So I think you've read it as well. I think I actually gave it to you. I Will Teach You to Be Rich by
Yeah.
Ramit Sethi. So my husband reads a lot of stuff on Reddit and online. And he brought home this book one day and said, this is talked about as being amazing. So I was like, okay, never heard of it. Digga, digga, digga. And I just loved his practical style. So very different to other books that I had read. And he was teaching about compound interest or compound growth and actually using the stock market, but also your pension. And it was just like, I have never heard anyone talk about money in this very resource management way. So that was a key shift, because I think growing up, we're led to believe a life is defined by money. So, right, once I've got this amount of money, I'm entitled to have this kind of life. And actually, that book was the first one that went, actually, life, it's the other way around. You design your life using all the resources you have, so that it's not limited on how much money you have or time or freedom. You then manipulate these three to build into the life that you're creating. So it was crazy how one book, and I do like Ramith, and Tony Robbins is very good. His book Money Master the Game, I think, was the other one I read at the same time.
And so one thing that strikes me, and I always try and describe it to people, as stepping over to the other side of the fence. So
Yeah.
so when you're on one side of the fence, especially if you're not from a wealthy family who have invested, so I think there's a closed group of people who, if your parents did it, if you're in a circle, if people are talking about it at work, you get exposed to it. If you don't get exposed to it, you're on one side of the fence, which is, I make money and I either buy things or I save, and that's and you pay into a pension maybe, and then at some point that kind of looks after you. But other than that, it's a little bit of not a lack mindset, but we like to see it. We like to see our money. And so I speak to people all the time where they would much rather have £20,000 in an emergency fund than think about increasing their investment contributions, because that disappears and I can't see it as easily, and it could go up and down. Whereas in this ISA or in this savings account, I know it's here. And so I see so many people that are on this side of the fence that don't know about this other way of thinking, which is, okay, all the people over here know that if you give up some of that, not all of it, but give up some of it and put it to growth, it's going to come right back to you. So do you think there is this like shift that people have to make where they go into the unknown and step to that side?
Absolutely. And you're really asking people to act on faith. Okay, so remember, we tend as human beings to see what we can see is just all what we know. But you're so right. I think with anything, you should never invest. Investing is just another way to say, I'm going to give it to someone else to do something with, right? That's all we're doing with our pensions. I never realized I was investing in the stock market in a pension until somebody, I read it and I'm like, oh yeah, how do they expect to make interest growth on that for me to get an income? Of course, they're giving it to other companies, real companies. And so you've got to have faith in what you long-term want to achieve out that money. You also realize though, because this is real life, it's not giving it to the bank who are going to give you a set rate of return. You also have to be okay with not getting the money back. Even though you will, you know that you're going to long-term make a growth, you have to be okay with, okay, this is not all my plan of attack. It is not, I'm moving all my savings I can see in the bank all over there and I'm all in. There's a balance to it. I call it the 4 pillars of money, right? You're doing all the habits because it's kind of like backing all the horses in a race. It's like, right, I'm going to give myself 100% success rate. I'm going to do all these things, and whatever one ends up being in front does not matter.
I think that's a really important thing. So trusting it with other people. So I'm going to give and trust that someone else, and also trusting history. History tells us that over a long period of time that it will grow, because especially if you invest it in your index funds or things that are whole of market. So not
Absolutely.
investing everything into Tesla because TikTok told you
Please
so.
don't. Please don't put into Bitcoin. I've got Bitcoin, but I'm certainly not putting all my savings into
Only
it.
because you're playing with it. I mean, I bet your Bitcoin investment's the difference between a takeaway, deciding to do a takeaway or not, whereas other people are thinking, well, that's how you go.
The thing about investing is, so I would kind of say I'm a full-time investor, full-time entrepreneur at the moment. I'm always looking, I call it lifestyle investing. So that's my focus. So I will invest our money, and my husband too, where we believe it's going to return on our lifestyle. So so I invested in Bitcoin well over a year ago when it was about $5,000 or $4,000. And so the money that we put in, yes, you're right, it was marginally smaller. Well, we couldn't have predicted what it's at right now, right? We're at 30, we're about $40K dollars. I can't remember exactly, right? But that's not normal. That's just getting in, at the right time, if you like it. Yeah. So I think,
and it was never meant to be. And at the time,
it was never meant to be.
It was
exactly.
It was fun money. It wasn't all your life's bet on something. It was this point of point things in a few different directions, some more volatile than others, and see what happens.
And the most of my strategy is completely index funds and trackers. I mainly track actually the US, UK and global funds. So that means, well, one fund you can literally buy that is tracking the whole world economy. So you've got all the top players. But the beautiful thing about index funds, rather than picking Tesla or an individual company, is that league table that you're buying, well, somebody will always get replaced into it.
Yeah.
So Tesla doesn't do so well, they'll replace it with somebody else. So that's
the
the
next
great.
innovator that comes along will,
Exactly.
and you know, you've got your reliables in there, the people that, you know, the Amazons, the Apples are in there if you're doing, you know,
Yeah.
the US and stuff. So if you are thinking that someone watching this has never thought about investing, they're trying to get their money in order, they're trying to be more financially well, what would you advise for someone starting to think about investing for their future?
So I would say, if you're thinking about it yourself, and I know you teach this on the plan, make sure this is not something that you do because you think you're missing out. Okay, it has to be part of a strategy. And for us, I started investing small amounts and also in my pension at work, and also paid off the debt. So the debt was the main focus, but I started these other habits that I knew long term would add up, but it was very small. And the reason I did that was building up the muscles almost. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going, like, start anything, it's like working out. You don't go and run a marathon the next day. What you do is you say, right, I'm going to run 100 meters. You know, I'm going to do that the best. Okay, I'm comfortable with that. I'm going to do 150 meters. So I actually believe, and you know, if it's different in any way to what you believe, but do the habits you want at the same time. So I'm very goals based. So I don't believe that you should only just pay off debt and then switch. I believe actually do the goals, the majority that is important right now, but also build up these other habits at the same time. So literally, the best thing to do is just start. So the simple thing is, at work, you know, if you've got a pension, find out and talk about what's the contribution you're making in percentage. What's your options also for free contributions? So usually an employer will give you benefits. They'll give you more money in your pension for free, and it is free. If you don't, it's not taken from your top line salary, it's actual free money in your pension to grow. So if that's a simple thing that you can say, well, I'm going to, instead of just putting 1%, I'm actually going to match their 4%, and they're going to add on 4% on top. Take it, you know, if you can allow your budget to stretch. That's such a simple thing. And I also just decided I was going to read as much as I could. Don't just take anybody else's word for it. So just because I'm talking about investing, know what the terminology is, know what you're doing. Don't just open a random account and go, oh, well, I'm on Trading 212 or Vanguard, that'll do, you know. Know what you're actually doing. You wouldn't do anything else without knowing. So why trust investing without knowing the terminology?
I think that makes so much sense, because there's a difference between, some people will just take no action. They will read
Yeah.
and read and read and watch, and over a course of a year, they could
Yeah.
have taken action earlier, done something about it, and benefited. Other people will jump straight in, you know, watch something on the internet and go, I'm going to get one of these Trade 212 accounts because I might get a free share. And it's just too impulsive. It's somewhere in the middle is really, really good. I mean, something as simple as you said, finding room in your budget to doing some form of investing, whether it's a pension or whether it's an ISA. You know, even if you opened up, you can open up a new ISA every year. There's what, a month left of the tax year. Open up a
Yep.
stocks and shares ISA with your bank that you already know, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
pick a really simple fund after a bit of research, and put £100 in it. And hopefully, if that's proportionate to your income, you've invested, you've opened up
Yeah.
an account, you've done it safely, it's not changed your life, but you talked about it's the muscle memory, is
It's
it?
the muscle memory, because as well with investing, they always say that the best time to start investing is today. The second best time would have been 10 years ago. So like, think about, it's like paying off debt. You never say to anyone, well, if you could just wait 4 months until we get your TV license paid off, and then, no, you say, no, we start today, this is the
Yeah,
best time.
and start small and stuff,
Exactly.
for sure. And I think that you know, and it's a great point you made about pensions. I think a lot of people on watching this will think, I'm not an investor yet, and what you're saying is, oh yes, you are.
Yes, you are. If you've got, and also, you know, we have a state pension right now. So the government, obviously that's via tax, but we can't rely on that, especially like, so at my age, I'm going to be 40 this year. If you're my age or younger, please don't assume that there's going to be a state pension there. We don't. Now, I'm not saying there's not going to be. What I'm going to say is it might be
Treat it as a
means
bonus.
tested. It might be means tested. It might be that you only get it in certain cases. So just assume that you've got to figure it out your own way. And so if that's not via saving or investing, you're going to need an income when you can't work. There's no other way around it. So honestly, if you can start to even think small today, future you will probably give you a pat on the back.
Definitely. Well, listen, I think that you and I are completely aligned. Like, we have a dream to get millions more people being more financially well and investing. And a lot of that is a message to women, because women are more unlikely to invest than men. But actually, it's a message to everyone
It's
that,
everyone.
I think what we want to do is get people to the other side of the fence. If all you do is make money and spend and save, make money, spend and save, then there's a lot of stuff that you're missing out on with a few really simple habit changes, aren't there?
Absolutely. And don't be scared to read or watch videos. Another important thing, if you identify as female in particular, sometimes we think that it should be our partner or somebody else does it. It's just that the culture, I think we've grown up in the UK, women, we don't tend to talk as much about money. It's kind of more men voices or male voices we hear. I think it's super important, like everything, we take ownership of our health, our bodies, our well-being. Take ownership of your money decisions, have the discussions with your partner, or if you're on your own, make at least one decision about your money. And that's just going to be a ripple effect of empowerment as well in other areas of your life. Because certainly I know my grandmother and probably great grandmother, they weren't even allowed a bank account. Like,
No.
we have to think about this. We assume things like having a bank account in our own name, being on a mortgage. This is all just very recent. And I encourage you to go and look how recent this has been in the UK. We're at this beautiful point in history where we can have a lot of control over what we do and what we decide. Embrace it. And that's to everyone, male, female, whatever. Embrace that you can have control and make decisions over everything, because there was a time where we didn't have that empowerment in place.
And now there's so much information that it is so easy. You do not have to go to a university library, get out a big textbook. You don't have to be financially qualified. In fact, in a real amazing thing about money is actually it's one of the few things that with following a few simple just math rules, you can do really well. Whereas if you want to be an architect, you can't just go and put a building up. You're meant to know, years of study. And so that's what's it's really, really interesting about money. But you have to put some effort in, not loads of effort, but and that's ironically, like, to close, that's a form of investment as well, isn't it? I know that you're very, very passionate about books, and you're always sharing the latest one. You always send me them, so I've got a nice gen file that I absolutely should be paying it forward and sharing with other people. But yeah, that's a form of investment. And reading about investing, there's so much free resource out there that hopefully through doing our chat today, Jen, we may have encouraged a couple of people to take that step and invest. So thank you so much.
No worries at all. And what I would say is, last thing to close up, remember there's no mistakes. It's like everything to do with money. Nobody can make a mistake in the past. It's just a learning curve. So don't be scared to get it wrong. Everybody makes mistakes. That's part of any journey.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me. Bye.
Bye.